So my name is Joe Dunn. I go by the handle Joe Community. So I'll just go ahead and hop into the slides here. So a little bit about me. I am a grassroots community builder here in Portland. That's how I got my start, at least. And I'm pretty fortunate in the sense that my hobby and my profession is building communities. And for the last 13 years, I've been working at a company called Markham. We're a Microsoft partner here in town, and I have been focused on building Microsoft communities professionally, which has been a really nice complement to a lot of the grassroots stuff that I do. So I get to see this really broad spectrum of corporate-backed communities and grassroots communities. And outside of work, I spend my time helping other businesses build community programs, and I help community groups build better communities. So just as a quick disclaimer, I'm definitely speaking on behalf of myself, not representing my company today, nor am I speaking on behalf of any of my communities. So a couple things that to throw out there as some provocative statements. So the word community is just kind of thrown around by everyone today without really any sort of meaning behind it. But we throw that word around because for everyone, the word community resonates. Like we all want to be a part of a community. We've wanted to be a part of communities for eons. And businesses like to use that term without really having any sort of definition behind it. And when a business throws around that term, I'm oftentimes wondering, do they themselves even know what it means? But that's what I've spent a lot of my time thinking about is, what does the word community mean? And there's some different ways we can analyze where does the word community show up today. So it certainly shows up in advertising. All sorts of businesses will say that, you know, be a part of our business, be a part of our community, buy our product and it'll make you part of our community. And sometimes those are legit, sometimes they're, you know, less. We also see the word community thrown around in job titles and organizational roles all the time. And depending upon the industry that the organization is in, there's actually a huge degree of variance in what the word community means. For example, if you're in the hospitality industry, or if you're in the long-term care industry, you may use the word community within like a community manager, for example, to mean that this is a person who is going to be managing residents of a long-term care facility or residents at an apartment complex. And it's a very different thing if we're talking about community engagement in terms of professional services or technology, where you may be managing customers, you may be looking at managing a global conference of people. So very different scales from elderly home to global conferences, right? So community can be a very broad term in that sense. In addition, you find businesses who use the term community generically in mission statements and business rhetoric, and there may not actually be a lot of heft behind what they say there, but they might have a statement like, you know, it's important for us to be a part of our community or serve our community. What does that really mean? You'll also times see the concept of we have a responsibility to serve our community. Either that is a written statement or something that their executive team will just say quite often without a lot of definition again behind it. But what we're going to be talking about today is really the programs of community management and what those look like for businesses. And then it's important to also understand too that programs have different maturity levels. So your business could have a very small community program. It could have a very large community program. And this is all something that you should be able to measure. And that's really what I've spent a lot of my time focused on is how should you measure this stuff? How can you measure this stuff? What performance indicators should you be looking at from a community program perspective? And how should you integrate this into your different business units? So the first thing I had to come up with was some measurements. There are a number of people out there who have spent time also thinking about how to measure your community groups. I didn't find any of those useful for what I was doing, building small grassroots communities. And so over time, I've built a lot of these tools myself. The one that you see here is what I call the Community Maturity Index. It's a very simple tool. We're not going to be able to spend a lot of time diving into the complexity of it today. If you think about a very simple community group, let's say like a photography club here in Portland. They have a Meetup page, they have a Facebook group. and you are a photography shop owner and you want to go to this photography club and sell them cameras, how could you get involved? Well, you'd use a tool like this to understand some of the dynamics for that group. And with the Community Maturity Index, it starts out by understanding that small groups usually start from a perspective of having just one person who's leading the Meetup page, the Facebook group, or sometimes they're just a chapter of a larger organization in another city. That one leader, though, as the group grows, they are going to hopefully find some people to help them out with leadership decisions, and that would get them into this kind of third bucket where you have a person who leads it and some helpers. This is a pretty important distinction because hypothetically, if that one leader steps down, the helpers who are in the group would keep the group going, even if that one leader's gone, and hopefully the group will keep building. This is really important to understand if you're a photography business, because you don't want to spend a bunch of time and money investing in a community group that could fall apart in 6 months if the leader burns out. And you might need to check, hey, how are you doing leadership? How's it growing? The next kind of common level of community groups is when you have multiple leaders. So it's not just the one person who's taking all the leadership responsibilities. It's not just a few helpers who have informal things, but you have several people who are really bottom lining the activities of this group. And this could be a very formal organization, board members, informal things like co-organizers on a Meetup page. And those are very, very strong groups. The next kind of level is when you have a group within a much larger community. So if we're looking at a photography club in Portland, well, there's probably a lot of different photography clubs in Portland, not just the one your business wants to invest in. And because it's just one part of a greater community, there's a lot of dynamics to be conscious of there. But more importantly, though, you need to be able to measure some of this stuff in some specific terms. Oh, and to back up one moment, Community Maturity Index is it's really a life cycle. So once a group gets to a certain size, it's very common that they'll spin off new chapters. And it's not just measuring leadership of a group, it's measuring a lot of important aspects for how well the group is growing and how well it really helps people in the community. But measurements, if you were to look at this on a consideration of how much time you spend and how much expense you have, you could get some really good gauges of how much it costs to be engaged with these groups based upon the leadership level. And you could also get an idea of the returns that you could expect, based upon these broad buckets of how the group works. And you could identify that there is some sweet spots where you'd want to engage communities and other spots where you don't want to engage communities based upon, generalized buckets of where that group might be at. This is this sort of program is a really useful way to understand, my business wants to be involved in this photography club. We want to be involved in some of your events, but also we don't want to just be there as a vendor. We really want to help the community grow. And we want to take your group from where it is now to where it can be in a much stronger spot. And these sort of programs really do lead to measurable results. I help a lot of businesses with the marketing side of things. I'm a marketer myself, and I have a great track record to be able to prove this, and I could cite all sorts of other businesses that do this. So this is definitely a measurable thing you can do within a business. And there's many other measurable components that you could have in a community program, depending upon your business goals. We're not going to be able to spend time diving into all of these today, but there's a whole bunch of different reasons that businesses do get involved with community groups, and they are very measurable, and they can lead to very good success. If that's the sort of stuff that you want to learn about, I have a group here in town called the Community Manager Meetup, where I teach this to people. We have a whole bunch of really good community leaders that come through, everything from businesses who have a community manager to faith groups and sports leagues and photography clubs and people that are just like, hey, I'm thinking about starting a Facebook page. Is that a good idea? And we help each other and help, build better communities here in town. So that's what I was going to talk about today. I hope I am approximately on time.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I mean, I know during this time, it's really difficult and not allowed to gather together as a group. What would you say for those communities that have kind of, semi been established? What can they do to continue that engagement and continue to stay together without, losing any momentum they may have gained before the pandemic?
Yeah, so 3 things come to mind that I've been helping communities with. So the first one is don't miss a beat. If your community has traditionally met on, for example, the second Tuesday of each month, don't give up that spot. Find a way to host that meeting online. And certainly there's plenty of tools out there. If you need help with tools, contact me, contact anybody, reach out and ask for help online. People will help you. The second thing is don't just, replace what you've been doing with an online group, add to it. So your second Tuesday of the month meeting may be really, really good as an in-person event, and as an online event, maybe not so much. But what else could your group do as a new type of meeting that would be good online? Start throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks for your community group. And the third thing is, as I kind of just alluded to, don't be afraid to experiment. This is a great time to try out new things and see what works.
Do you have any recommendations as far as platforms, tools, technology that can kind of bring communities together?
Absolutely not. So I definitely come from a Microsoft space. So I like Microsoft Teams, and we're using Zoom. Zoom's super popular, but each community is very different. So if your community is primarily composed of, hip young millennials, or if it's composed of people that are retired, you have really different requirements. You also might have the like privacy concerns within your community, and there's some tools that are better at that than others. So I could help you walk through that if that's something you as an attendee or watching this are curious about. Could talk about those tools.
Perfect. And people can find you, I'm sure, on LinkedIn, Facebook, or on your Instagram page.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. It was really great to talk to you and learn more about community building. I think moving forward, we'll be featuring various communities within the Portland area so that, people have the opportunity to join communities they may not have known of before, and they can understand a little bit more about how to build community for themselves. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for everyone spending 10 minutes with 52 today.
Thanks.
Thanks.